The Canadian energy sector, once a beacon of prosperity and national pride, finds itself ensnared in a web of bureaucratic red tape and political maneuvering. At the heart of this crisis lies Bill C-69, a piece of legislation passed in 2019 that has sent shockwaves through the industry and cast a long shadow over Canada's economic future. This bill, with its noble intentions of environmental stewardship, has instead become a symbol of regulatory overreach, hindering vital energy projects and jeopardizing Canada's place in the global energy landscape. Bill C-69, with its labyrinthine approval processes and ambiguous criteria, has created an environment of uncertainty and delay, deterring investment and stifling innovation. The consequences are far-reaching, impacting not just the energy sector but the livelihoods of countless Canadians who rely on it. From the oil sands of Alberta to the refineries of New Brunswick, the chilling effect of this legislation is palpable. The debate surrounding Bill C-69 is not merely about pipelines or energy production, it strikes at the very heart of Canadian federalism, pitting provinces against the federal government and igniting a firestorm of controversy. The stakes are high, with implications for Canada's economic prosperity, its international standing, and its ability to chart its own course in a rapidly changing world. This is a story of missed opportunities, political agendas, and a nation grappling with its energy future. To understand the current predicament, one must delve into the origins of Bill C-69. Prior to its enactment, the National Energy Board, or NEB, served as the primary regulatory body for major energy projects in Canada. The NEB, with its technical expertise and streamlined processes, was generally perceived as fair and efficient in its assessments. However, the Trudeau government, driven by an ambitious environmental agenda, sought to overhaul the system, arguing that the NEB was too industry-friendly and failed to adequately address climate change concerns. Enter Bill C-69, a sweeping piece of legislation that replaced the NEB with the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, or IAAC. While touted as a means to enhance environmental protection and Indigenous consultation, the bill introduced a complex web of new regulations and expanded the scope of project reviews to encompass a vast array of factors, including gender impacts and social considerations. This broadening of the assessment criteria, coupled with a lack of clear guidelines, has created a quagmire of uncertainty for project proponents. The IAAC, lacking the NEB's specialized knowledge and experience, has struggled to navigate this complex regulatory landscape, leading to significant project delays and cancellations. The result is a chilling effect on investment, as companies become increasingly wary of navigating the treacherous waters of Canadian energy regulation. The once thriving energy sector, a cornerstone of the Canadian economy, now finds itself mired in uncertainty, starved of investment, and facing an increasingly uncertain future. In a landmark ruling in October 2023, the Supreme Court of Canada delivered a split decision on the constitutionality of Bill C-69. The court, in a 5-2 ruling, found that while certain sections of the bill were constitutional, the overall designated project scheme overstepped federal jurisdiction and encroached upon provincial powers over natural resources. This ruling, hailed as a victory by critics of the bill, offered a glimmer of hope that the tide might be turning against what many perceived as federal overreach. The majority opinion, penned by Justice Russell Brown, emphasized the principles of cooperative federalism, stressing that while the federal government has a legitimate role in environmental protection, it cannot usurp provincial authority over resource development. The dissenting justices, however, argued that the bill was entirely constitutional, reflecting the deep divisions within the court and the broader Canadian public over the balance between environmental protection and economic development. Despite the Supreme Court's ruling, the future of Bill C-69 remains uncertain. The Trudeau government, while acknowledging the court's decision, has shown no indication of repealing or significantly amending the legislation. This intransigence has fueled frustrations among industry leaders, provincial governments, and ordinary Canadians who bear the brunt of the bill's economic consequences. The battle over Bill C-69 is far from over, with the political and legal ramifications likely to reverberate for years to come. The economic consequences of Bill C-69 have been profound and far-reaching. Canada, endowed with the world's third-largest proven oil reserves, finds itself unable to fully capitalize on this natural bounty due to the stifling regulatory environment created by the bill. Pipeline projects, essential for transporting Canadian energy to global markets, have been delayed or cancelled outright, forcing producers to rely on more expensive and less efficient means of transportation. This lack of pipeline capacity has resulted in a phenomenon known as the Canadian oil price discount, where Canadian crude oil sells at a significant discount compared to global benchmarks. This discount, estimated to cost the Canadian economy billions of dollars annually, represents a lost opportunity for Canadians. Meanwhile, the United States, once reliant on foreign oil, has become energy independent, in part by capitalizing on the very resources that Canada is unable to get to market. The economic fallout from Bill C-69 extends far beyond the energy sector. The chilling effect on investment has stifled innovation and job creation across various industries. Communities that rely on resource development are struggling as projects stall and investment dries up. The human cost of this policy failure is real and growing, with families and businesses across the country feeling the pinch. The longer Bill C-69 remains in place, the greater the economic damage will be, jeopardizing Canada's long-term prosperity and competitiveness on the global stage. Section 5. Carney's contradictions. Champion of globalism, architect of Canadian decline. Adding fuel to the fire is the stance of Prime Minister Mark Carney, who assumed office in early 2025. Carney, a former Goldman Sachs executive and Bank of England governor, brought with him a wealth of experience in international finance and a reputation as a staunch advocate for globalism and climate action. However, his tenure as Prime Minister has been marked by controversy, particularly his unwavering support for Bill C-69, a policy seen by many as detrimental to Canadian interests. Critics argue that Carney's globalist outlook blinds him to the realities facing everyday Canadians, particularly those whose livelihoods depend on the energy sector. His refusal to reconsider Bill C-69, despite its economic consequences and the Supreme Court's ruling, has fueled accusations that he is more beholden to international organizations and a global environmental agenda than to the Canadian people he was elected to serve. Carney's supporters, however, maintain that he is a visionary leader committed to positioning Canada as a global leader in the transition to a low-carbon economy. They argue that Bill C-69, while not perfect, is a necessary step in addressing climate change and ensuring that future development is sustainable. The debate surrounding Carney's stance on Bill C-69 highlights the deep divisions within Canadian society over how to balance economic prosperity with environmental responsibility. Section 6. Brookfield's power play profiting from Canada's loss. Further fueling suspicions is the involvement of Brookfield Asset Management, a global alternative asset management company where Carney served as vice chair prior to entering politics. Brookfield's recent acquisition of a major U.S. pipeline company has raised eyebrows, with critics alleging that this move represents a conflict of interest for Carney and a prime example of Canadian capital fleeing the country due to hostile domestic policies. The optics of this situation are undeniably problematic. While Canadian energy projects are stymied by regulatory hurdles, a company with close ties to the Prime Minister is investing heavily in foreign energy infrastructure. This has led some to speculate that Carney's support for Bill C-69 is part of a broader strategy to benefit multinational corporations like Brookfield at the expense of Canadian workers and businesses. Whether or not these allegations hold any water remains to be seen. However, the perception of a conflict of interest is damaging, further eroding public trust in the government's handling of the energy file. The Brookfield controversy highlights the need for greater transparency and accountability in government decision-making, particularly when it comes to policies that have such significant economic and geopolitical implications. Section 7. A House divided, political fault lines over C-69. The political landscape surrounding Bill C-69 is as polarized as ever. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has made the repeal of Bill C-69 a cornerstone of his platform, promising to unleash Canada's energy potential and restore the country's standing as a global energy superpower. Poilievre's message has resonated with many Canadians, particularly in Western Canada, where frustration with the Trudeau government's environmental policies runs deep. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has been a vocal critic of Bill C-69, accusing the federal government of waging an economic war against her province. Smith has vowed to challenge the constitutionality of the bill and assert Alberta's autonomy over its natural resources. The battle over Bill C-69 has become a proxy war between competing visions of Canada's future, pitting those who prioritize environmental protection above all else against those who believe that economic prosperity and environmental stewardship can go hand in hand. The political stalemate over Bill C-69 is symptomatic of a larger problem in Canadian politics: the inability to find common ground on issues of national importance. The hyper-partisanship that has come to define Canadian politics in recent years has made it increasingly difficult to have rational conversations about complex policy issues. The result is a political system characterized by gridlock and inaction, where the concerns of ordinary Canadians often take a back seat to partisan bickering. Section 8. Beyond economics, a question of sovereignty and choice. The debate over Bill C-69 extends far beyond the realm of economics. At its core, it is a question of sovereignty and self-determination. Should Canada, a nation blessed with abundant natural resources, be free to develop those resources to the benefit of its citizens? Or should it cede control of its economic destiny to international organizations and global agendas? The answer for many Canadians is clear. Canada, a sovereign nation with a long and proud history of resource development, should be free to chart its own course. It should not be beholden to foreign interests or pressured into adopting policies that undermine its economic prosperity and national interests. Bill C-69, with its complex regulations and ambiguous criteria, represents a significant erosion of Canadian sovereignty. It gives foreign entities undue influence over Canadian resource development and limits Canada's ability to compete in the global marketplace. This is not about being pro-environment or anti-environment. It is about ensuring that Canada remains a free and independent nation, capable of making its own choices about its economic future. Section 9. The time to act. Repeal C-69, unleash Canada's potential. The time for debate is over. Bill C-69 has proven to be a costly mistake, a failed experiment that has done more harm than good. It is time for the Canadian government to acknowledge the failures of this legislation and take decisive action to repeal it. The future of Canada's energy sector, and indeed the prosperity of the nation as a whole, depends on it. Repealing Bill C-69 would send a clear signal to the world that Canada is open for business and ready to reclaim its place as a global energy leader. It would restore investor confidence, unleash billions of dollars in investment, and create countless jobs for Canadians from coast to coast. It would allow Canada to fully capitalize on its vast energy resources, generating wealth for all Canadians and strengthening the national economy. The repeal of Bill C-69 is not just about economics, it is about restoring balance to the Federation, respecting provincial jurisdiction, and empowering Canadians to control their own destiny. It is about standing up for Canadian sovereignty, defending Canadian interests, and building a brighter future for all Canadians. The time to act is now.